attention for a moment or two's time to a story that you haven't heard of before, but I hope you hear a lot about in the next little while. There is a patch of land in France, where hundreds of Australians were involved in a bloody battle and many died. Many are in unmarked graves in this part of France. It's just connected off the edge of the Somme, and it's Bullecourt. Now, this is an area that is sacred to all Australians. If you have been to that part of the world, if you have been to the Somme, then you're most likely to have been and had a look at this sort of thing. Well, we hear some news that there is a French company that wants to build a wind farm in this patch of land. They want to dig up the ground, disturb the graves, to put the cables that connect to the wind farms. This is not about wind farms, this is not about renewable energy, this is about the desecration of mass graves. This is something that for some reason no one in Australia has picked up until now, and it is something that I hope from this minute on, every local member of Parliament uses their power to speak to their leader. Those that are friend and foe alike when it comes to this show and my views, can we please be united that the disruption of dead Australian soldiers' unmarked graves is something we must do everything we can to fight against. Campbell Newman is the former Queensland Premier. He has a very direct and very personal connection to this because a family member is one of those that may well be disrupted by this project. I'll let him explain what we're talking about, and I'll tell you what you can do in a couple of minutes' time. If you do nothing else tonight on this program, please pay attention to this. Now, it is known, obviously, to the locals about the Australian involvement here. It is obviously known that Australians are buried there as well. But give us an idea. I mean, as you say, we know about all sorts of other places in France where literally, schools are named after, that literally, thank you to the Australians is written on the side of one of the schools. How aware is the local area about the connection to Australia?
Well, they're very aware, and indeed the local community, particularly the former mayor, were behind the creation of a museum, which I believe has received Australian government funding as well. And there's sort of, if you like, a relationship with the Australian War Memorial in an informal sort of way. And that's because there were two battles of Bullecourt, April and May 1917. This was a terrible bloodbath. Some 20,000 Australians, British and probably Germans as well are known to have died, I believe, in total. And on the first battle in April 1917, 10,000 Australians casualties as well. The Australians attacked up a hill into German barbed wire in a supposed surprise attack when the Germans knew they were coming. They had no artillery support because it was meant to be a surprise attack. They were mown down, but they managed to capture the trenches. Then after several hours of holding those trenches, they were forced to withdraw, and the Germans actually shot them down as they were retreating back across no man's land after the order every man for themselves was given. A terrible battle, but then they went and did it all again in May. And now, with that incredible loss of life, we're seeing a situation where what is effectively a war grave, and I want to stress that, there are many war cemeteries in that area, that you can go to. But there are many hundreds of men that are unaccounted for from the Australian side who lie in the field. That's their resting place. The whole field, and we're looking at images of the battlefield as we have a talk about this tonight. Those fields are the graves, contain the graves of Australian soldiers.
Well, and it's impossible that the construction of these wind farms don't require great disruption to those grounds, and no matter what the company wants to say about the care, the distribution cables, the construction zone, the earth-moving equipment is going to disrupt those bodies, and because literally they are unmarked, you don't know how many people we're going to be disrupting here.
Paul, let's get to the bottom of this, the pointy end. This means that they're going to be digging foundations for 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 wind towers, essentially in an Australian, well, a Commonwealth grave, because there's other people there as well. It involves trenching as well for high voltage cabling. And if people really want to understand what it means, it's like they've gone to the Lone Pine Cemetery at Gallipoli and dug a trench across it and put a wind farm up. That's what's going to happen here. It is an outrage, clear and simple. I don't know why it hasn't been headed off earlier, but it needs to be headed off by pressure from the Australian government.
Well, and this is a process we're going to start now, and I again thank you and your supporters who are deeply connected to these family members, including yourself here. But let's talk about that pressure and where we can put it from here. Is it conversations with directly to the Prime Minister? Is that the way we're going to go first? Do we go through the more informal area like the War Memorial? Where do you think the pressure needs to come from Australia to understand, and for people watching this program tonight, to ring an office tomorrow and start the process of saying, you need to fire up about this?
Look, Paul, I think when the Prime Minister knows about this, and I'd be surprised if he does, but when he knows, I would like him to take it up directly with the French President. That's how serious this is. That's how important this is. We don't go around digging up people's graves willy-nilly and desecrating, their place. I mean, again, it's another analogy. It's like one of the ships that sunk in conflict. So HMAS Sydney, it is a war grave. This battlefield is a war grave as well. I mean, I could accept if there'd been a proper recovery operation to go in forensically and look for our missing servicemen, then maybe you could have an argument. Then it's just about whether a place like that should ultimately be disturbed. But that has never been done, and there are hundreds of men who are unaccounted for. So I'd like the Prime Minister to take it up with the President of France, and I'd like to see the French government cooperate in stopping this outrageous project.
Well, you've got your own voice. You can count ours as a megaphone beside you. Campbell Newman, thank you so much. We'll follow this all the way through to what we hope is the obvious, logical end of this. But every Australian who cares about this, every Australian who has a connection to this, it's time to hit the phones. It's time to call the Prime Minister's office and do it tomorrow, saying you've got to fire up direct to the French. Campbell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Campbell Newman, here's where you get involved. You need to call the Prime Minister's office. Now, it is a very rare thing for me to ask you to ring a specific number, and sure, we'll jam the phones. Be nice to the people who answer the phones here. But you have to ring your local MP tomorrow. You have to say, what are you doing about this? You have to ring the Minister for Defence. You have to ring the Prime Minister's office tomorrow. Because I want them to know that you now know about this. The Australian newspaper will also have a lot more on this story tomorrow, and we will continue to talk about it a lot on Paul Murray Live in the next little while. Australia and France, we get along. Australia and France is a place where we do an awful lot of business. We get along with each other. The leadership can talk to each other. One president can call one prime minister. One minister can call another minister. For God's sake, do it. Because dead Australians are the ones who we must be standing up for. Let's take a quick break. Back with more.